Is he playing? The question echoes down a cold hallway. An empty locker, a crooked nameplate, whispers of strep and contract drama right before kickoff. 144 yards against Baltimore. 184 and 2 scores steamrolling New England. A farm kid. A 7th-round fullback turned running back. The curse wasn't the game. It was the fame. From a Denver bench to a Brady Quinn trade to a Browns depth chart that cracked open. This is the rise, fall, and quiet redemption of Peyton Hillis. He arrived in Denver with a fullback's frame and a 7th-round tag, drafted to block, not to headline. But when injuries shredded the depth chart, the coaches had no choice but to hand him the ball. And what they saw wasn't a lead blocker. It was a battering ram with soft hands and surprising burst. Then came the hamstring tear, the kind that pauses a young career right before it starts. He'd flashed promise, but hadn't yet earned a place to stand. When Josh McDaniels took over, Hillis vanished into the background. 13 carries all year. He was back to collisions without credit, watching others take the touches. The chip on his shoulder hardened. So when Cleveland called, trading quarterback Brady Quinn for an unproven fullback, he packed something heavier than pads. He packed a point to prove. Cleveland didn't promise him much. He was penciled in as a fullback again. But week 2 cracked the door, and by week 3, he blew it off its hinges. Against Baltimore's top-ranked defense, he ran straight through arm tackles and headlines, 144 yards and a message. This wasn't a fluke. The sideline felt it. The crowd felt it. The underdog became a force of nature. Momentum carried into a season no one saw coming. By year's end, Hillis had 1,177 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, and nearly 500 receiving. But the numbers only tell half the story. He set a tone. He turned 3rd and 2 into a formality and checkdowns into bruises on linebackers. Every run looked like work, and every Sunday, the city saw itself in him. A player who lowered his shoulders and refused to quit. Then came the signature moment. Week 9 against New England, 184 and 2 touchdowns. The Browns bullied the Patriots off the field, and Hillis bullied his way into legend. In a franchise starved for hope, that game wasn't a box score, it was a declaration. The city had a new hero. Inside the building, respect arrived early. Head coach Eric Mangini told him he saw a 1,000-yard back. Teammates nodded. He practiced sore, still asking for reps, still doing special teams drills. The locker room saw the hunger. Cleveland fans saw their reflection. And then fame arrived. Fast. Too fast. EA Sports launched a Madden cover vote. It started as a fun marketing gimmick. For Cleveland, it became a mission. Each round, Hillis knocked off another star, one after another. Ray Rice, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers. In the finals, it was Michael Vick. 66% of the vote went to a 7th-round bruiser in brown and orange. It wasn't a poll, it was a statement. The city had its guy, a player who looked like work boots and winter breath. Nicknames surfaced: Avalanche, White Rhino. Talk shows called him a phenomenon. Fantasy football crowned him a hero. Living rooms across the Midwest shouted his name every Sunday. He'd gone from waiver wire pickup to RB1, from unknown to everyman superstar. Then came the breakfast call. You're on the cover. Disbelief first, then a small grin that gave away the farm kid underneath. Pride in the vote, not the brand. Pride in being seen. But a crown changes everything. The cameras showed up to camp. Reporters asked about pressure, the curse, and whether last year was real. Every shrug, every tweak, every missed rep became a headline. The same story that built him was now looking for cracks. Inside the locker room, the air shifted. Teammates fielded questions about his future instead of their own. Coaches balanced celebration with caution. The ground under him started to move, quietly but constantly. In one offseason, Peyton Hillis went from adored to observed. The hero had been crowned. The countdown had quietly begun. The curse was never the game. It was attention, sudden, relentless, and impossible to control. The 2011 offseason began in fog. The NFL lockout froze communication. No practices, no access, no negotiations, just silence. And silence breeds stories. Reports claimed the Browns had offered Hillis a new deal. Others said he turned it down. He swore there was never a real offer at all. But the gap between headlines and truth grew wider by the week. When football finally returned, the spotlight felt hotter. Every carry looked like a contract statement. Every substitution turned into a debate. He'd grab his hamstring and the crowd would start murmuring. Was he hurt or holding out? Then came the strep throat Sunday, an empty locker before kickoff, a crooked nameplate, the whispers bouncing off tile walls. Strep is routine, but during a contract storm, it looked like protest. Within an hour, talk radio branded it Hillgate. Commitment, once assumed, became a question mark. Inside the building, trust started to fray. Coaches saw caution where they once saw toughness. Teammates fielded questions about his effort instead of the game plan. What had been blue-collar grit now looked, under harsh lights, like detachment. Physically, the wear showed. The hamstring wouldn't loosen. The hits lingered longer. Mentally, the noise never stopped. The lockout chatter, the contract rumors, the headlines about his mid-season wedding while rehabbing. It all blurred together until football no longer felt like football. And then came the rumor that didn't make sense to anyone, that he was considering quitting to join the CIA. ESPN ran it. He denied it immediately, said someone inside the organization planted it. Whether true or not, it was another seed of doubt. In the NFL, perception moves faster than recovery. Once a player is labeled a distraction, it sticks. Every glance in a meeting room changes. Every injury gets side-eyed. Hillis could feel the distance growing between himself and the team he wanted to stay with. He tried to fight it the only way he knew, by working, by showing up early, by outgrinding the noise. Extra treatment, extra lifts, staying late. But you can't outwork perception. The machine had already made up its mind. No offer ever came. Just silence dressed up as business. He wanted to stay in Cleveland, but Cleveland had already moved on. For a guy who'd built his career on straight lines, block, hit, run, repeat, the politics bent everything sideways. The locker that once buzzed with energy now sat still, like the last day of school when everyone else already left. So he packed his gear, not in anger, but in confusion. Cleveland had been the one place where his style fit the city's heartbeat. Hard work, no shortcuts, no headlines. He'd given them everything his body had, and still, it wasn't enough to stay. Years later, he'd admit what fans suspected. Honestly, I wish I would have retired in Cleveland. It wasn't nostalgia talking, it was recognition. That was the last place football had felt honest before the business, before the noise. He'd left a piece of himself there, the player who ran for the city, not through it. The spotlight moved on. So did the league. Back home, fans argued about the Madden Curse. But the truth wasn't supernatural, it was human. Fame warped his world. Pressure magnified every choice. The attention that built him eventually swallowed him whole. By season's end, the league had already written its line, one-year wonder. The fall wasn't a collapse. It was erosion, slow, inevitable. The man who'd carried a city now carried the weight of what once was. Kansas City was supposed to be a reset, a new team, a fresh start. But resets don't always bring revival. The role was smaller, the carries fewer. Short yardage downs, protection assignments. The kind of work that doesn't make highlight reels. He still hit hard, still finished runs, but it felt mechanical, like he was running out of habit instead of hunger. He'd gone from a city's heartbeat to just another name on a depth chart. From fans chanting his name to strangers checking his stats, the adrenaline that once fueled him now gave way to fatigue. The game hadn't just taken a toll, it had taken meaning. New York came next, another uniform, another chance. But concussions crept in, the kind of fog that lingers no matter how tough you think you are. Doctors told him what no athlete ever wants to hear: walk away. In 2015, he did, quietly. No farewell tour, no headlines, just the sound of a locker door closing. For the first time in years, he stepped out of football and out of the noise that came with it. No more interviews to defend, no rumors to fight, no spotlight to dodge. He'd always been a worker, not a celebrity. Fame had amplified the wrong parts of him and drained the right ones. He called it peace. Slowly, that peace started to rebuild him. He spent time with his family, learned to live at a normal speed again, and reflected on how the game he loved had consumed him. When he finally spoke about it, there was no bitterness, just honesty. He admitted he'd been young and stupid, that fame had gotten to him, that he'd lost perspective. But beneath the regret was something better: growth, understanding, a kind of maturity no box score could measure. And then came the moment that defined him far beyond football. A family trip to the beach, his kids and niece caught in a riptide. Instinct took over. He dove in, fought the current, and pushed through the waves with the same drive that once carried him through linebackers. But this wasn't adrenaline. This wasn't applause. This was survival. Every stroke was resistance, every breath a choice. He reached them, lifted his niece onto a boogie board, and pushed her towards safety. Then he turned back, went after his son. The current dragged hard. He kept swimming, kept pulling, until his body gave out. About 20 yards from shore, he lost consciousness, lung and kidney failure. He woke up 10 days later in a hospital bed, alive only because lifeguards reached him in time. When it mattered most, he'd done what he'd always done, put everything on the line for the people counting on him. He'd risked everything and paid the price, but he'd saved them. Different field, same instinct. That's redemption, not a comeback, but clarity. The fame that had distorted the image finally gave way to the man behind it. For Cleveland, that one season still glows like a lantern in a dark stretch of years. It wasn't just about yards or touchdowns, it was a feeling. The 184 against New England, the snow, the roar, the belief that for once, the city had a player who worked the same way they did. Hard, tough, unglamorous, unbreakable. Fans still talk about him like a folk hero. The Madden vote, the bruising runs, the impossible rise and the abrupt fade. In bar rooms and message boards, his name still surfaces whenever people talk about what could have been and what, for one season, actually was. For everyone else, his story became a lesson about how fame warps everything it touches. One minute you're a fantasy football god, the next, a punchline. He was proof that the league can build a legend and erase it just as fast. But for Peyton Hillis himself, that year means pride, not pain. He doesn't hide from the chaos that followed. He owns it. The lockout, the rumors, the missteps. He said it outright. He was young, he learned, he changed. The truth about football sits underneath it all. Talent, health, opportunity, and narrative have to align perfectly, and they rarely do. For one brief season in Cleveland, they did, and it was unforgettable. The Madden cover ended up being both crown and target. It made him a star, and then it made him a story. But the real curse wasn't the pixels. It was the pressure, the noise, and the illusion that attention equals worth. Because when the lights dimmed and the headlines faded, Hillis didn't disappear. He simply stepped out of frame. The man who once carried defenders now carries his family, his peace, and a clearer sense of who he is. That's the twist most people miss. The curse was fame. The cure was walking away. One incandescent season made him a legend. Losing the spotlight helped him become whole again. Because in the end, it wasn't the Madden curse, it was the mirror. And when the reflection shattered, the man behind it finally stepped forward. If you want more untold runs like this, subscribe and queue up more deep dives on NFL legends you remember, where hype crowns heroes and history humbles them.